Hey, it's the Robot King. Do you know what today is? Today is a day where I'm going to sit down and I'm going to figure a few things out. One of the things I have to figure out is a bit of terrain mumbo jumbo because, well, I love building terrain. So, uh, I was shooting back and forth with a couple of people yesterday on the topic of Grey Knight terrain and what it would entail. And on the thought of Grey Knight terrain, I got to thinking, well, what would Grey Knight terrain be like? Uh what would a set of terrain that screams out Grey Knight? What would that appear as? So the concept, of course, of the fortress monastery was talked about, and then a mobile monastery, and then mobilized reliquaries, things like that. So all of this was bantered about a little bit, and then my mind got to working. So while I was taking a wee sleep in the early hours of the morning, then I started thinking about cathedrals. Pretty common little doodad thing. Pretty common in the imperial world. And then, of course, I looked at a bunch of Gothic architecture, and I looked at a bunch of Grey Knight's art, and pretty much I think I may have figured out what I'm doing. So let me switch this camera over. I'm going to change over to my other camera, and I got my work area set up, or at least a work area set up, and I'm going to start thinking about what I'm doing. Join me! Now the most important thing to remember is to start with materials. Foam, foam board, foam core, foam blocks, extra bits of foam, anything you have lying around, alright? So start there. Gothic architecture, or any of that fun stuff, you know, it deals with a lot of straight lines and whatnot. So what I'm going to start with is I'm going to start designing, well, it's a lot of straight lines, but it's also a lot of swoops and fun things like that, flying buttresses, arches. But what I'm going to start with is I'm going to start with essentially a mini cathedral of sorts. So I need to make the body for it. This is going to be a large main support flying buttress somewhere, but it has to be shaped out. I have my large file, box cutter, X-Acto knife, ruler, pen to make sure everything is marked off right, and we're going to get this started. And I've jumped ahead here, you see. This lovely thing here is actually going to be the central portion of the cathedral. Now I've jumped ahead of myself, but I'm going to build off the sides of this. I've only jumped ahead of myself for one reason, because I need the central built first. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my file here, and I'm going to smooth out all of this this foam, like right now. But it's really important that you go ahead and you make sure that you do it while you still can. And you got to be really careful too, because you don't want to injure anything. Now, there are portions of this that will be harder to fix than others. Now, the reason I use one of these big files is because I can hit a lot of foam at once. It has a good grit, and as you can see, it's smoothing that all very nicely. Now, some people use sandpaper. The reason I don't use sandpaper on things like this is because sandpaper, you can't always get a perfectly flat surface. With this, I am guaranteed I can get a perfectly flat surface. And look at that. It's important to make sure your strokes are big so that you can make everything of the same evenness. Because occasionally when you're cutting foam you get chips like that. which a lot of times, depending on what you're doing, are fine, but if you're building something fine, like a cathedral, or anything crazy like that, you want to make sure everything's smooth and pretty. Now, as you can see, that's getting pretty smooth there, isn't it? That hole. And you can actually go back like this and smooth out these edges. But you gotta be gentle, okay? Be gentle with your edges. Now that's already kind of smooth there. I'm going to turn this off, I'm going to smooth the rest of these edges up, and then I'm going to jump to the next piece, okay? As you can see, I'm getting some outer layers. Bear in mind this is the central core. I've cut one white piece, I got to clean up those edges. As you can see, I'm working on positioning. I got to clean up the edges, but that's actually the central core of it. That piece there is actually going to be a drainage area or something. Trust me. Now listen up, that was just a teaser. That's the beginning of the project. There's more coming, so I want you to watch more as it comes. But this is kind of like the start. I know you have no idea what you just saw, or what I'm doing, or anything. But you know, I don't care. It started raining like a bastard out. Woo! This is the Robot King. I'll be back soon.